Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here today. My name is Bill Koetzle. I'm here on behalf of the Building a Better America Coalition. We're a coalition that's really dedicated to improving the permitting process in the United States. We spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. talking to elected officials about the importance of getting permits so people can work. But we really made a decision earlier this year that we need to come out and really meet people where they do work. And this is part of our journey. We were in Ohio, and now we're happy to be here in Pennsylvania. And I think you'll hear today from this great panel about why we are here. So much excitement, so much activity. Really, Pennsylvania is a crossroads of energy and manufacturing and technology. And we're going to hear a lot about the opportunities here, but maybe some of the challenges as well. And so first, let me thank Steamfitters, Local 420, for hosting us in this great facility. Thank you all for being here, and of course my gratitude to the panel for taking time out of your day to join us here for this discussion. A little bit about the process here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. They can give a statement or a brief opening remarks, and then we'll move over to Q&A. As moderator, I have some questions that I'm interested in, but certainly look for folks out in the audience. If you have questions, we'll have a microphone and love to hear from you all as well. So without further ado, let me introduce the gentleman to my right here, State Senator Frank Farry. Really very happy to have you here today, sir. He has been dedicated public servant and really dedicated to public safety and child safety, really a leader, also a fire chief, as I understand, which is incredible in this type of weather. I just can't imagine today. So please let me thank you again for joining and open it up for any remarks you have.
Sure. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and be on this panel. I appreciate how broad the panel is. And it's always great when you can have the elected officials, the contractors, the labor providers, and the business community together to talk about issues that are important to them. I had started my career in municipal government, and that is the most basic level of permitting that comes about. And, you know, I had a great mentor from our township manager. And one of the things I learned from him is you're there to serve the citizens and make the citizens' lives better. And I think as we govern, that should be the root of every decision that's made moving forward. So, you know, as I've ascended to the House where I served for 14 years, I know we have Representative Martina way to my left, but we also have Representatives Tomlinson, Hogan, and Marcel, who are also here, and I appreciate them coming here and taking an interest. You know, but as I started my time in the House and was recently elected to the State Senate, I've continued what I learned in that township. You know, it's almost like an apprenticeship to elected office. And, you know, I think we can all come together to ensure that we're building a better America and that things are better for our citizens, because it's really about the citizens and serving them.
Thank you, sir. Before I turn it over to Representative White, let me recognize another person in the audience, Kyle Melander from Congressman Fitzpatrick's office. They've really been a great leader in this space in Washington, and an office I know you all can rely on to help you with the work you're doing here. Really a tremendous member. Let me turn it over to Representative White. Happy to be in your district here today, and look forward to hearing from you about some of the work you're doing, and maybe continue our discussion with your LNG task force.
Yes, thank you so much, Bill, for the warm welcome, and certainly welcome to Northeast Philadelphia, which is home to my district, and many hardworking blue-collar families out there who benefit tremendously from the resources that are available here in Pennsylvania and jobs that are in the energy industry. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. It's a very exciting time for Pennsylvania to be able to have opportunities that are knocking at our doorstep to get involved in the industry and the energy sector in particular. As you had just mentioned, I serve as the chairwoman of the LNG Export Task Force, which has been an exciting time for me to be able to delve into this issue along our Philadelphia Delaware River to find a location that could work best for Pennsylvania to be able to export our energy abroad, but also help to reduce the cost of energy here at home and ensure that we have a very strong future that is not reliant on foreign adversaries' energy resources. So I am Again, very grateful to be part of this panel. I serve, again, not only as the chairwoman of this task force, but I serve as the House Republican Caucus Secretary on the leadership team out in Harrisburg, and it's been an honor to serve throughout the I guess the many years that I've been here. No, since 2015, I've been in office, so for about 8 years, and I'm just very, again, grateful to be able to serve my community here in Northeast Philadelphia, where I grew up. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I introduce Jim, let me recognize one more distinguished member of the audience. We have State Senator Jim Dillon. Sorry, can't see anything from the lights. Welcome and thank you for participating again today. So let me quickly turn it over to our host, Jim Snell, who's the business manager here for the Local 420. This local is just getting off the ground. I mean, it's only been around for about 120 years,
Yeah,
but
give or take, yeah.
but they are responsible for a lot of the great work and the projects that go on in this area. And Jim, thanks again, and look forward to hearing from you.
Sure, thanks, Bill. I believe it's 123 years to be exact, as of this past April. So, well, you got an invitation to our 124th next year.
You can see why I'm up here. Math was not a strong suit.
No, thank you very much for the introduction, and I want to thank Building a Better America and API for inviting me, inviting my local union to be a part of this board. When Stephanie Wisman from API asked me to host and asked me, could I be a part of this? 100%. This is a topic that is very important to Local 420, more importantly to the Philadelphia building trades, okay? At the end of the day, we're about jobs, okay? We're about, as Senator Farry mentioned, serving your citizens. I'm here to serve my membership, right, and their families. So, and you know, everybody's happy when they're working, right? And we've seen too many large projects over the course of a handful of years, you know, projects that could have and should have gotten permitted in this region, but because of red tape and everything else, it did not. And these large projects go down south or go to another state. And what's that mean to me? Well, my members should be on that project working. They're not because of red tape. So, you know, when we're asked to be a part of this, we jump on it. And, you know, I just want to say thanks for having us here. And we look forward to a lively discussion.
Thanks again, Jim. Now I'd like to introduce Rob Buckley, who's the CEO of Buckley and Company. And sorry, I have a normal bio, but I spent some time with Rob before we got here, and it's really, truly amazing to talk to a gentleman who really builds things for a living, and stuff that we all write over and that if we would notice if it wasn't getting done. And then on my way up, I read about everybody in America's aware of the fire and the collapse of the I-95, and it really is a miracle, the fact that road is available. We can drive over that bridge right now, and listening to Rob talk about the economic impact of that project not getting done is incredible. And to do it in less than 2 weeks, 12 days or less is almost mind-numbing in this day and age. But what an amount of cooperation that must have gone on between local, state, and federal officials. But I think it's important to realize that it requires a lot of workforce and capability for that to happen. And that means these projects have to be going on all the time. You can't just call Rob if he doesn't have work and his company doesn't exist. I mean, I don't know what the state of I-95 would be there now. So I'll let you talk a little bit more about what you do, but thanks again for being here, and it's a true pleasure.
First of all, thank you very much. My name's Rob Buckley. I'm just a construction worker. I've been a construction worker for 48 years now. Yes, I am an SOB. I'm a son of boss, okay, in case anyone's wondering. It's our 95th year in business today. I know what you're thinking. I'm not 95 years old. I just feel that way most of the time. But it is a pleasure. Why am I here today? Because Jim would not say no, and my nephew is a 420 fitter, and I got to make sure he stays employed. But with that aside, what we have is, yes, I'm here today to prove that things can get done and will get done if you have the right cooperation with everyone. And I don't mean, I was lucky enough on that 95 job, and there's a perfect example. Things can get done when people want to get things done. I was lucky enough to be the quarterback. Yes, we called some audibles, and it make your skin crawl what really happened on there. There's not enough time here today to explain it. But permit reform is important on many levels, and it really has to be redone. When you're in business, the meter's running. When you have these politicians and whatnot, they're great people, don't get me wrong. However, when things don't get done, it costs everyone. I'm employing 110 people here in Philadelphia. I'm a union contractor. I'm proud to be a union contractor. One of the reasons why we're able to pull that off is because we did have a trained workforce of that size, and we carry them with us all the time. So it becomes easy with a little cooperation from the state, the local, the state, the federal level. When the President of the United States sends a message down that this is the most important job in the United States right now, maybe there's a little pressure on you. But bottom line is there's a lot of quick decisions that had to be made that were done. There's utilities underneath there. We're worried about collapsing the utilities with the heavier material. That's why I use a lightweight. So there's on and on. But bottom line is it was a cooperation we had between the politicians, the labor, private industry, the labor unions, the president, the vice president, Pete Buttigieg, the great Josh Shapiro. If you don't know him, you should, because he's probably one of the best governors we've ever had. And more importantly, Mike Carroll, and he's our Secretary of Transportation, who never left my side there the whole time. And in the beginning, I thought he was, okay, we'll get to your photo op in a minute. We're busy. But he never left. And that's the kind of cooperation you need. Now, as far as permit reform, this is the biggest pain in the ass going right now, in my opinion. We have jobs, we have opportunities, but that opportunity only lasts so long. And next thing you know, it'll go somewhere else. You lose your funding, you lose these businesses, and they go elsewhere. Money goes where it's respected. People go where they're respected. If they're not respected, they're going to leave. It's just that simple. So you play kick the can down the road, and you play with guys like us who are in it to win it, and that's just that simple. You got to have the reform. You got to get your job done. They got to be held accountable. When I bid a job, it's $80,000 a day that it's coming out of me. I kind of like my house. But I'll bet if you had the people that are in the permit process and you tell them, you either get this thing approved or you're going to lose your house, I'll bet there's a little more motivation to get that done. That's how serious this is. These gentlemen over here are relying on the contractors like us to take risks on these jobs to get these jobs moving. It's good for the economy. It's good for the industry. It's good for the union. It's good for the people in this area of Philadelphia. Philadelphia has been ignored. We're trying to put Philadelphia back on the map and to make people attract businesses, and that'll carry your gross, your taxes, everything that goes along with this. That's why it's so important not to play games with these permits. Give them the permits, get it done, whatever has to be done, and that's why I'm here today representing the heavy highway industry. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. Next, we have Joseph Safran from the Lower Bucks Chamber of Commerce. Joseph brings a wealth of experience to his support of the business community here in this area. Joseph, appreciate your being here and look forward to some of your comments.
Oh, great. Thank you, Bill, and I want to thank you and Building a Better America for having me on the panel today. Throughout my professional career working in the utility and agriculture industries, I personally been seen it up close how the permitting and regulatory processes can slow down projects, can impact companies, and just really how these things can really metastasize and create problems throughout companies. And now here at the Chamber, I'm excited to represent our community, our business community in Lower Bucks County. And it's interesting to me. I have several of my state reps and state senator, as well as our congressman's office, and frankly, some of my members at the Chamber. So I know how important and vital this issue is to Lower Bucks County and, frankly, the entire Philadelphia region. And, again, Lower Bucks County and Bucks County is primed for economic growth. We see it everywhere I drive. There's construction and there's building, whether it's roads or new businesses, and items like permitting slowdowns and the implications they have to that economic growth are endless. And so I'm glad you have me here today to talk about the potential impacts it could have to the growth in Bucks County.
Thanks, Joseph. And the last opening comment we'll have before we turn to questions from Alex Halper from the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, they represent businesses across the state and bring a perspective from the full state of Pennsylvania. Alex.
Bill, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to be here today and be part of this discussion. The PA Chamber is a statewide chamber of commerce. We represent about 10,000 business members throughout the Commonwealth. We also work with really an incredible network of chambers of commerce throughout Pennsylvania, including Joe here in Lower Bucks, Anselm out of Philadelphia. So to our lawmakers here, please know that you have the full backing of the broader chamber and business community as you're championing this very important priority. The number one goal at the PA Chamber is simple. Pennsylvania needs to be the number one state in the country to do business. That is how we're going to attract employers to Pennsylvania. It's how we're going to encourage our existing businesses to stay here, to expand here. And I know that that is a goal that I'm sure all of us in the room, all of us up here are 100% committed to. And we also know, based on feedback we consistently hear from businesses, that improving our permitting processes at the state level is a critical part of ultimately achieving that goal. And we need partners in the private sector. We've worked extremely closely with our friends in the labor community. My president and the president of the Pennsylvania Building Trades signed a joint op-ed a number of months ago. I don't mind saying it isn't too frequent that the head of the state chamber and head of the Pennsylvania Building Trades are signing an op-ed together, but we were extremely excited and continue to be very encouraged by such close coordination between our constituencies. And we need great partners in the public sector, and I'm happy to be with a number of lawmakers, both on the panel and in the audience, who are championing this issue. And if I can close with just a couple quotes, speaking of elected officials, I'll quote a couple governors or former governors. So last year, major construction expansion project that was planned for Western Pennsylvania, $3 billion project, was expected to create about 900 jobs, six-figure salaries. Tragically left Pennsylvania and moved to Arkansas. The former governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson, as they were kind of cutting the ribbon. Let me read you a quote, if you'll indulge me here, Bill. Governor Hutchinson said, "Arkansas will permit that steel mill. We'll build that steel mill and we'll have it open for business before you could ever get a permit to even start construction in Pennsylvania." I mean, that has got to be a wake-up call to all of us proud Pennsylvanians who cannot let another travesty like that occur. I'll quote our governor, Governor Josh Shapiro, at his budget address, who said, "We all know that our licensing and permitting process takes too damn long." Again, that's a direct quote. So appreciate that we have such enthusiasm from our governor, and I really think forums like this and hearing from folks who are truly on the ground and are important to advancing this discussion. But thanks again, Bill.
Alex, what a professional lead into the first question that was on my mind is to put our elected representatives on the spot real quick. Senator Farry and Representative White, I mean, what is the sort of appetite that you see at the state level to improve what goes on here at Pennsylvania? And then if you don't mind, Representative White, maybe a little dive into how you guys approach the permitting on the LNG task force.
Sure. I think one of the things that clearly came out of the pandemic was it was pretty amazing the amount of regulations and policies that got suspended. And it caused a lot of discussion in Harrisburg of, if we can suspend them during challenging times, when things are better, why do we need them? And there were some comprehensive looks and there were some rollbacks on some of those things, but more work needs to be done. The governor, when he came into office at the beginning of this year, issued an executive order for his agencies to review their permitting and licensing process. If a permit or license is not met within 90 days, the applicant gets their application fee refunded. But that still doesn't mean they get the approval. So it's a step in the right direction, and those reviews need to happen, and we commend the governor on that. But I can tell you, at least on the state Senate side, we feel more needs to be done. We've passed 3 bills thus far. Senate Bill 350, which was Senator Phillips Hill and Rothman's bill, actually takes a look at the process, adds more transparency. If your permit is rejected, the legal authority that was the basis of that rejection needs to be published with that. If the statutory deadline is missed, then that permit is deemed approved. So that puts the burden on the bureaucrats that are reviewing these permits to really be timely in doing so. But I don't think they should run the clock to the statutory deadline. If it can be approved, it should be approved and approved in a timely manner. Senator Barletta has 2 bills. One creates a better balance. So if there is an appeal of a permit that's issued, the appeal can only be based on public comments. Some of the outside interest groups are actually challenging the issuing of permits, but not based on anything that came through the public comment period. And it's a delay tactic. They're trying to run the clock out. I'm sure Jim has seen that with some of the pipelines and whatnot, and some of the things that have happened there. So that needs to be a fair and tightened process. And then her second bill actually reforms the process of the appeals judges. Some of them just continue to serve. And her bill, if it becomes law, will require them, when their term's done, to come back through the confirmation process. So that'll give the elected officials the opportunity to review the actions of that appellate judge and see if, and again, these are within the agency, but to see if they are being an activist or they're truly following the law. During my time in Harrisburg, one of the things I've clearly seen is what we put into statute. So there's 26 senators that vote for it, the majority of Senate, 102 House members, majority of the House, and a willing governor signs into law. What we put in statute then sometimes is morphed through the regulatory process. And some of the real battle is actually with the bureaucrats. There are some great people that work in state government that understand what I said in my opening. We're here to serve the citizens. And by allowing the panelists that are to my left and right to be able to do their jobs, the citizens are better served. By getting 95 reopened, you serve the citizens, whether it's the business community or people commuting to work, or even taking their child to daycare or to where they're being educated. And all, but the process sometimes gets held up by empowered bureaucrats. And it's not necessarily the ones that are elected and sent to Harrisburg that are making these decisions. These are nameless, faceless people that are on the other end of a phone line or a computer screen. And hopefully the governor is setting the tone to streamline it. I will tell you, the licensing of professionals, whether it's a nurse or a certification of a teacher, we have seen the backlog of that reduced during the current administration. And I think that's pretty important. But the decisions by these bureaucrats affect not just the large projects we're talking about, but they also affect the certification and licensure of professionals, which can affect our medical profession. It can affect those that are providing care for our vulnerable population, our seniors, and those that are disabled. So I think as a whole, the governor can set the tone within the executive branch on how these agencies are going to be run and actually streamline the process. And, we talked about I-95. I-95 clearly showed when there's a will to get something done, it can get done. So let's start with COVID, where we saw we were over-regulated, and on all these regulations do not need to be in place to have a safe society, to how you can streamline and actually get something done. I mean, the temporary opening of that structure was incredible. Those of us that are old enough remember the I-95 tire fire, and how long was 95 closed for that tire fire?
Each situation's a little different.
Right, and that was more substantial, but I mean.
That one was a post and removal. Now,
Yeah.
we posted that, we opened the traffic a little different, and we also did the gas tanker fire that was in Chester at Curlin Street. We also did the flood that just happened a couple years ago from Ida. So each one of these situations are custom. You have to react quickly, you have to think, you have to have a lot of minds in there to get that done. So it's not really fair to say what was this one versus this one. 2 separate issues. You're basically talking about a steel structure versus a precast structure. So even the structures, and I am available in cassette and 8-track in case you can't sleep tonight. I could get real technical with you, but I don't think today's the day to do it.
Right, but I mean, the
Each
opportunity
one, yes,
to
each
have every,
one
Rowing in the same direction, though.
That's correct.
You had everybody rowing in the same direction,
It
which
was the
is
same
important.
thing, but I've never had the cooperation from the political side on any of those projects as I did on this one.
Right, and that was the point I was trying to get to. It shows
Yes, sir.
when we all work together, regardless of party, regardless of federal, state, or local, we can get these things done. And I touched on having worked in municipal government a couple weeks ago in one of the municipalities I represent. I literally had two people that had projects, and everything was submitted. One was just building 2 houses on lots neighboring to his home. It was going to be affordable housing. He was replacing existing housing stock that was there, and the people reviewing it literally had everything they needed for 2 months. His contractors were ready to go. He had materials on site. He's losing money. He is a really small businessman, and he was watching the potential of building these and the financial costs potentially ruin him. And another was a small businessman that was trying to expand his business, and the weight on there was problematic. So, the problem's also at the municipal level as well. And, one of the things I joke about having been a longtime firefighter is if I'm dispatched to your house and it's on fire, if I fought that fire the way we legislate, not just will your house burn down, the whole block's probably going to burn down. And I think the same thing can be applied to this process as well.
Thank you. Representative White?
Well, the House is much better at legislating than the Senate. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, I really appreciate Senator Farry's comments because he's 100% right. You need really, really strong leadership, people who are going to step up to the plate and make sure that everything gets streamlined to make a project like the ones that you were just describing, whether it be the I-95 corridor, an emergency situation, or a project that we know needs to be invested in from these big corporations. I mean, they're all looking at Pennsylvania because we have this great energy, and I'll talk a lot more about the energy sector in my case scenario, but we have these shale basins here in Pennsylvania that are just enormous opportunities for us to be able to streamline some regulatory processes to allow for these projects to actually take place instead of losing them to either other states or other countries. And so with our LNG export task force, what we've been able to identify is a few different things, one of which is that it's going to take less than 50 miles of infrastructure pipeline to be able to put this thing through. You've got a large LNG export facility that can go in the Philadelphia region. The facility itself would be a multi-billion-dollar investment, doesn't require the government to step up with any taxpayer dollars. These companies want to come here. They want to be here. But when they see, the potential for the potential issues with our regulatory process or our approval permitting processes, they're questioning because it takes a lot of resources, a lot of, not only investment, but time, and time in the business world is money. So, what we're trying to do on this task force is to identify the areas that we can actually streamline some things for these folks, while also maintaining safety and security and protecting our environment, but ensuring that we have a business environment as well that's conducive for creating jobs, growing our economy, and providing, like I said before, the energy security that we know America needs and wants. So those are a couple of things. One of the other pieces that came about during our committee or I guess meetings of our task force was a individual had come before us as a testifier, which was the former FERC chairman, Neil Chatterjee. And Neil shared with us just that the process alone at the federal level can take upwards of 3 years and cost millions of dollars itself. And then that's before any legal challenges that they may face. So, if you're facing multiple years in court, for them to actually review a FERC decision, after that, a project could even, it will actually have to go through a Department of Energy approval process, and that can add even more time. So this is, something that's obviously a concern, and something when a company is making a big investment or a decision to participate in a local economy and to, like I said, make those kinds of big decisions, they know that, again, time is money, and they can't afford to just, allow these types of governmental red tape to stand in their way. And a lot of these companies, they're good actors, right? They want to go through these processes. They know that it's required, and they're happy to accommodate whatever those requirements are, but they want to know that they can get it done quickly. And if the permits aren't approved in a timely manner, those are the dollars that are leaving Pennsylvania and they're going elsewhere. So the other piece of it is just that our European allies, they are counting on us. They can't afford for us to be delayed or continue to, for their sake, be faced with dealing with adversaries abroad that are problematic for their own people. We saw what happened with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and we can not only, fill the European demand, but we can also prepare for any future geopolitical pressures and instability in Europe that may arise and elsewhere abroad. So I think those are important key pieces, but also at the local level, right? Our constituents are paying jobs. They're seeing their own energy prices soar. And when we are just sitting on the side proactively to address the things that are inhibiting business from being able to come here to produce those good paying jobs, well, then we have to do more. And that's, I think, why we're here today, is to talk about how we can facilitate those conversations and bring about real much needed change. So, other than that, I mean, it's really just that the process of going through it and evaluating what the different procedures are and how we can do better here in Pennsylvania. And it's a learning process, but it's an important one, and it's very beneficial for the House in Harrisburg in particular, because we've had so much turnover over the past few sessions in terms of members. So we're all going through this learning experience together. But last session, I can tell you that Governor Wolf was a strong supporter of this legislation to create the LNG Export Task Force to figure this out. And even now, Governor Josh Shapiro, we're all working in a bipartisan fashion to ensure that we're putting our best foot forward as Pennsylvania and giving our constituents the best opportunities possible.
Thank you so much. Maybe I can ask Rob to maybe put a little finer point on permits. What are some of the obstacles? What are the things that you have to do to get a work going? And then, Jim, if you don't mind, maybe have you comment on that, and also the importance of these projects from your perspective for developing our workforce and the capabilities for the future. So thanks, Rob.
Well, first of all, no one likes to change. Change is tough. People resist change. Change is inevitable. One of the problems we have is just environmental impact, environmental resource, land right away, just permitting process for trucks, just the permit process in general. You lose the opportunity. The opportunity is only there so long, and then it goes away, and that doesn't help anyone. It erodes your tax base. It deflates the people. Your morale is down. If you give a person an opportunity and you give him a job and you give him a good paying job, he's going to be there. He's respected. You want him there. When these jobs leave, they're not coming back, just like what was referred to from Alex. Once those jobs are gone, they're gone. Once the business leaves Philadelphia, no one has any work. No one's going to want to live here. No one needs part. We're overtaxed. We're overregulated, and we need change. And part of the thing that drives the industry right now, you'll see it's just so difficult to get work in this area. Your fuel price is going crazy. The fuel's out of control. I bid a job in year 2000. The price basically under $3 for diesel. It's now over $5 today. We monitor it every day. We're losing $2 to $3 a gallon. We don't burn a gallon of fuel, just like we don't buy a gallon of milk at the store. You buy more than that if you have a large family. That's half the problems we have today. We have to get pricing under control. Price control comes with production. You can't be overregulated, and it just drives the cost up. People are going to leave the area if the price gets too high. You can't afford to live there. So how do you do that? You have to attract good paying jobs. You have to cut the red tape. You have to get the permit process under control. You have to employ people and respect the people and treat them with the proper respect so they want to work here. You want to be here. You want to attract businesses. And we got to drive the tax base down. If you look at Delaware right down there, there's zero tax in Delaware right now. You come here in Philadelphia, it's 8%. Now, if you're a businessman, think about it. Okay, I'm going to put an investment in. Do I want to invest in Philadelphia or do I want to invest in Delaware? Which one? You don't have to be a genius to figure that out. Now, what is going to make the difference? The difference is they can make a living. You have the right people that are trained. You have people that want to live here, that want to work here, and that's going to be the difference in this. Part of the regulation is you can't over-regulate them and scare people away. You have to attract them. What is going to attract them? Good paying jobs, good schools, good pay, and being respected, and that's why the regulations have to change.
Yeah, great point, Rob. You know, when we talk about permits, there's so many other things that go along with getting projects permitted quickly. Just for instance, in our world, Steamfitters Local 420, Philadelphia Building Trades, we had a $675 million project at Brascombe in Marcus Hook a few years ago, right? They wanted to be a part of the community. They wanted to build here. They knew about the workforce, what a good workforce, you know, this area provides, and so on and so on. The permitting process took forever, and they said, stop, we're done. We're going down to Texas to build this thing, right? So, you know, think about it, right? A couple thousand building tradesmen on the project for a couple years. Think about what that means to that little pizza shop. And there's plenty of them around little mom and pop shops in that Marcus Hook area. Pizza shops, a bakery, a little hardware store. You know, it's not just us, right, the construction guys that are so reliant on getting these permits passed quickly, but the little mom and pop shops. They're just as reliant on getting these permits passed. They want to see these projects up and running as well. You know, and the other thing that always bothers me when I see a project getting slow rolled, so to speak, you know, a little delay in permits, a project like that, those similar to it, if that project is happening, if we know that project's going to happen, I can bring in so many apprentices into my program, as well as all the other trades in the Philadelphia building trades, right? So if I have work coming, big work, I'm bringing in apprentices, young men and women, all right? If that project doesn't get permitted or there's an issue, I can't bring in many people. If the work is there, I'm able to bring in, you know, young men and women and start their careers, buy their first home, get married, have children, and that's the American dream, right? It's all part of this. You know, it all comes down to permitting, all right? You know, even you mentioned Governor Shapiro. I truly think he gets it, right? And a couple of those quotes you used over there, I had them, I was reading them yet last night, I got to remember these quotes, but you nailed it, right? What the governor said, takes too damn long. He told a story. I was fortunate to be up the end of January when he signed that executive order and created the Office of Transformation and Opportunity. He told a story, and this has nothing to do with construction, right? This is small business, right? There was a woman, I guess she had a beauty salon, cosmetology salon up in Allentown. Here she is. She needed a license, right? Needed a permit, right? She's paying what fees were needed. She didn't hear from anybody, right? She's making calls. I need help. What's going on? You know, her livelihood depended on getting that permit, right? So it just doesn't affect construction workers. Here's a woman trying to be an entrepreneur, you know, start a business, and she heard nothing. When the governor heard this, you know, boom, right away, you know, acted on it. So, you know, I think the state is definitely headed in the right direction. Representative White mentioned bipartisanship. I call it common sense. In our world, we don't care if you're an R or a D. We really don't, right? It's about what's good for the region, right? What's good for the economy, all right? And I understand, right? There's certain groups out there that, you know, always, you know, maybe aren't in line with our way of thinking, but we need politicians to have a spine. That's my opinion. And to tell these groups, listen, we hear your concerns, but this is good for the region. this is good. Think about that $675 million project that went down to Texas, right? They left because of the red tape here. Think about what that would have done, the tax revenue for that local school district, the state, the county. We all know this. So and like I said, I think we're definitely headed in the right direction in the state, but it's the feds as well, right? Definitely a federal issue on many of these projects. So we don't expect to solve everything here, but we've got to keep pounding the drum, right? And get our point across. And it's about, providing middle-class way of life to people, right? And that's what it is. And, we're certainly happy to be a part of this, and it's not going to happen overnight, for sure.
Thanks, Jim. Maybe you get a perspective, Joseph and Alex, from the broader business community perspective of priorities or how this is affecting. I think Jim articulated it well. This project doesn't just affect the contractors or the workers, but communities, businesses at large, and everyone else. I appreciate hearing from both of you.
Sure. Thank you, Alex. I'll go first. Thank you. In Lower Bucks County, as the director of the Lower Bucks County Chamber of Commerce, I represent 22 municipalities, over 1,000 businesses, all the way from small businesses to retail to manufacturing to some of the largest companies in the state of Pennsylvania. And so, what I represent is pretty broad. And actually, they do pay me to say this, but I also think Bucks County is one of the best places in the country to live and work. And I am getting paid to say that. But, for me, it's why wouldn't people want to come to Bucks County in the Delaware Valley to open a business, to expand a business. We have great transportation infrastructure. In Bucks County alone, we have major highways. We have a deep sea port. We have railroads that go up and down the East Coast, and we have obviously lots of colleges and universities. We have an educated populace and an educated workforce here, and the question always comes: why wouldn't they want to come to Bucks County? And I'll speak specifically for my area. Why wouldn't they want to come to Lower Bucks County? And a lot of that is it's going to be because, one, it is expensive here, and when you talk about permitting reform and permitting issues, anything that drives up the cost is a big deterrent to why somebody will move here. I think Rob said every day is money. It's costing more and more money, and they can just move down to Arkansas and open up a steel plant. So really, what I think we're trying to do is try to not provide additional reasons why people shouldn't move here to open up a business. It's hard enough when you decide to move someplace and you've done all your groundwork and you've done all your due diligence, and you say, yeah, this is what I want to do, and they say, I want to come to Bucks County and I want to come to Middletown Township and I want to move there, and then the state says, well, it's going to take 9 months to get this permit, or it's going to take this long to get that permit. And what we've just done is give them a reason, give them an opportunity to not move here, to not expand their business. And I think that, for me and the chamber and what we're trying to do is real negative. We're trying to provide growth. You always hear Pennsylvania looped into the Rust Belt states, and people are leaving Pennsylvania to go to the Carolinas or Arizona or Texas, and I think and I appreciate what Governor Shapiro is trying to do, because when you start to pull away some of those problems with licenses and permits, you provide people an opportunity to live and work here in Pennsylvania and in Bucks County and in Philadelphia, and not say, well, you know what, I'm just going to go someplace else. I mean, we hear it, we see California, and everybody jokes and it's California, but California has a lot of the same problems multiplied. And you see people leaving California. They do the U-Haul studies, right? And they say, the people leaving to Texas, and because they want to go places that they can raise their families, they can start a business, they can be entrepreneurs. They people want to work. People want to raise families. People want to be involved in their communities. And what you can't do is provide them reasons not to join. One of the big developments happening in Lower Bucks County is our old Fairless Hills U.S. Steel mill in Fairless Hills. That mill has been fits and starts with development over the last 20 years since the mill closed, and the developers now, they're doing a great job of is getting the buildings built on spec and trying to lure in, businesses. But, one of the things I'd be most concerned about is when they run up the problems with they're trying to bring an international business in there's federal regulations and whatnot, or if they're trying to recite a rail line, or issues with the port, or issues, working with the local municipality there. We should be encouraging them to bring this international development and the regional development, because this is a place that had, at one point, huge tax rateables, had, 10,000 employees there, and, employees a fraction of that, and really, was a huge impact in Bucks County and the region. And we, want to see that come back. And, permitting reform is one way we can increase the development there and, throughout the region. So that's my 2 cents from Bucks County.
No, I think it's really very, very well said, Joe. And in a lot of ways, these issues are very personal. Whether it's a cosmetologist in Allentown, which is my hometown, who can't even get her career started because of some getting caught up in the bureaucracy, or a grandparent who has to get on a plane to visit their grandkids because there weren't jobs in Pennsylvania, so the kids had to move out. As a statewide organization, we do tend to look at these things from a more macro, Pennsylvania-wide level. Earlier this year, the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics out of D.C. put out a report comparing states or ranking states based on net employer migration. So how
All right, here, we'll try it again. Got to find some common goals, some common ground, some way and do the best, what's the best for the worker, the region, the government, this, that. Has to be some common sense here that applies. I don't think this is really rocket science, what we're trying to do here. I don't think we're trying to reinvent the wheel. I think what we need to do is have a little common sense. And the way we do it in the private side, you have a small group of people that get together that solve problems. When you have a larger group, you're always going to get people that oppose it. You're going to have people that are for it. But sooner or later, someone's got to step up, and I just happen to be the lucky one because I'm the president of Buckling Company. You make some tough decisions that really sometimes you have to do. And in order to survive, that's what you have to do. You have to step up. You have to get a backbone or spine, like Jim was referring to. You have to make the tough calls, and you have to make it, and it has to get done. I would agree with what you're saying with the pipeline. I don't understand it. It's the cheapest way to move product in the area. It doesn't affect anyone. I don't get it. Why would you oppose that? I understand it. I can put a tunnel 100 feet under the ground. Talking about building a tunnel right now for the effluent into Chester. That's on hold. Why? Delaware County and whatnot, the counties are going to oppose it or be for it. Philadelphia wants it because they're going to lose the tax base. What's the best for the people? That's what we got to get back to, a common sense approach on what is the best. Forget the nonsense, forget the three-headed mute, this, that, the turtle, this, that. They'll still be there. We're not trying to kill everyone. No one wants dirty water and no one wants dirty air. I get it. Just common sense. Not going to kill everyone there. There's ways you can do it legally, economically, but you got to have a common sense approach. And I'm missing something. Maybe, I don't know, I ate paste, we ate lead on the wall. That's just what you did. It's not a big deal. Rode the little bus. It's what you did. It's just common sense. But basically common sense. You do what you have to get the job done. That's that simple. Thank you.
Well, maybe I can turn it back to you, Representative Weiss, since you've been discussed. And unfortunately, the funny thing is I have a feeling the LNG task force came about from the simple fact is you also have another demand area that borders you all to the north called New York that would not allow you to connect a pipeline to their significant demand and your significant resource. And now you have to look for another way to move that gas.
Yes, you're 100% right on that. But just to go over the common sense topic, common sense is not common. But I will say that, it's almost unfathomable to me that there can be, organizations who are for the environment and for reducing carbon emissions and trying to address concerns when it comes to fossil fuel emissions, and then oppose a project or in this case, we have an LNG export facility opportunity that's willing to invest in Pennsylvania. But to oppose that type of initiative that can actually contribute to global carbon emission reduction over the course of the next 50 years. So for me, it's like, well, how do we balance and ensure that obviously we're doing what's in the interest of not only our local communities, our region, but all of Pennsylvania, because in Pennsylvania, we have like 12.5 million people that we have to look out for too. So, we all have to evaluate and make those decisions. And like Jim said, you have to have good leadership that's willing to step up and explain and educate and inform people so that they can understand what the pros and cons are and what the benefits are to moving forward with something like this. But on a separate note, when you were talking about New York, I mean, they're banning just in people's households. You're not allowed to build new buildings with the gas stove connectors. I mean, everyday people are looking at that and they're like, well, then how am I supposed to cook my food with an electric? Because the electricity is actually coming from a natural gas source to begin with. So I'm a little confused. And my prices are going to go up because now it's more difficult. But in any case, so for me, I look at those situations and you look at government and they're just making things more and more complex and more difficult for business and for everyday people to even have the choice, right? So when it comes to Philadelphia in particular, though, when you're talking about transporting gas from our state to, say, New York, normally would happen through pipeline, but they're not allowing us to do that. So trying to find an alternative route because we have an abundance of natural gas here underground. Well, look at the port, right? We've already dredged it deep enough to handle the ships. We have the port, right? So now, what else is it going to take? Well, you need an LNG export facility, right? So is it feasible? Is there any opportunity for that to actually be real? The challenge is also not just for the facility itself, but also how do you have a U.S. flagged ship to transport the gas between our state and these New England states that are receiving gas from like Russia and all kinds of other adversaries. So, what do we need to do here? Well, we have a shipyard too that can build ships. So it's a perfect location. Philadelphia is a really special place. Pennsylvania is an incredible state that has amazing people who are very capable workforce, well-trained individuals, and we just have to take action. We need good leadership to take action and move these things forward in a responsible way. So that's what I'm here to do, and I'm really excited about all of us having this conversation today. It's good.
Senator?
I'll throw my first responder hat on. Pipelines are the safest way to move product.
Yeah.
On top of that. Rail's obviously under a lot of scrutiny. I'm not criticizing rail. Over-the-road transport, you never know what's going to happen. With drivers, people have no idea what goes up and down the rails and what goes up and down the highways near them, quite frankly. With pipelines, you have certainty you can train to, and it's the safest way to move. So that's one thing. I just wanted to wear my other hat for that. But to follow up, and I began by talking about the citizens, right? And that's the end users. And I think something Jim and Rob said, is about employment opportunities and whatnot. And you talked about education being important, right? Where people want to live. Two other things are being able to afford housing and having safe communities. You can come back, we'll do a whole other seminar on safety, right, of our communities. But I chair the Urban Affairs and Housing Committee, and one of the things as an elected official is you come into your position and you may have some areas of expertise because of your experience or where you previously worked, but then you're a foot deep in 1,000 other issues. And you have to rely on the stakeholders to learn those issues. I know a little bit about real estate and housing. However, now I'm the chair of that committee, and affordable housing kind of has a misnomer to it. We're not talking about slums and projects. We're talking about housing that starting workforce, your apprentices, can afford to be part of that American dream. Interest rates are through the roof, inflation's through the roof, but we want the opportunity for your workforce, your employees, to have an opportunity, the cosmetologist to be able to get that storefront. We want them to have that opportunity to live in a safe community and afford those homes, but they also have to go through the permitting process locally and zoning. And in talking to the stakeholders, they're some of the biggest problems, and the NIMBY aspect. So on a larger front, you have organized protests and organizations fighting against the work you're trying to do, quite often funded from wealthy people outside of this state who may have never set foot in this state that are paying protesters and paying disinformation campaigns out there to scare residents. But then you also have the NIMBYs, in the communities that are fighting against housing and some of these projects as well. And unless your house is from the 1700s or 1800s, chances are somebody in that neighborhood a couple generations ago may not have wanted your house you're currently living in being built. But we can't miss the workforce housing component of this as well as part of that American dream. Something we've done as a committee is we're trying to help with economic development opportunities because they're also job creators. And we're also trying to eliminate blight. Nobody wants to live on a street with an abandoned house that's overgrown, has rats there, maybe attracting nefarious people. So we're also doing a lot of work to clean up blight as well. And we're trying to empower local government and the economic development groups. Representative Hogan and I are working on some legislation to try and improve the blight issue, because again, that's part of building a better America. You want to be safe, you want to be able to afford a home, you want to have a good job, you want to have a good education system, and I think that all goes together, but it comes down to the elected officials having the backbone to stand up to the loud voices, which are generally the minority of the people. They're just a very loud minority to do what's right for the Commonwealth. And when we talk about the opportunity for energy, let's not forget our fixed income seniors that are in our lower income workforce that are paying the higher electric bills, the higher bills at the grocery store. And we really have an opportunity with our natural resources to ensure those bills are lower in this Commonwealth than they should be.
Thank you, sir. Is it anybody else from the audience want to ask a question? I won't put you on the spot. I'm just going to ask one more question. I'll open up to the panel to respond as you see of interest to you. Often you hear there's this conflict between projects and the environment, or getting this permit in the environment. I think, Rob, you articulated this view well. The NEPA Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, which is sort of the umbrella act process under which federal permitting is done, talked about harmony between the environment and projects. And, too many cases we see, I think that harmony has been broken. But I know that you do work every day. Your workers do work every day. I'd just like to hear your views of how you approach safety and environmental stewardship, and then I'll open up to all the panel for that.
Sure, Bill. If I could, you talk about environmental stewardship. I'll tell you, probably 95% of my local union, I'll tell you, 95% of the United Association, we hunt, we fish. There's nobody that wants a cleaner environment than my own members, right? And I'm sure Rob could agree with the employees he has working under him. Like I said, we want our children, our grandchildren to grow up in a safe, clean environment. Everybody here in this room wants that, right? I just think some of those opposition groups, they carry on so much. I'm trying to keep this clean, but they carry on so much to a degree. It's off the charts, and even when standards are clean, for a potential project, they're still screaming and hollering about it. So, listen, if a project is a bad project, then let the developer know about it. If there's environmental issues or for whatever the reason, don't continue to slow roll it. Don't continue to make this guy pay out of pocket, pay more legal expenses and everything else, and then at the end of the day decides to pick up and move somewhere else. Like the representative said, there are companies that want to do projects, want to work here in the state of Pennsylvania, here in the southeastern PA, So, there's nobody that enjoys a cleaner, safer environment than Local 420 members, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We get involved with a lot of big investments with equipment and whatnot. And with the regulations we have now, with the fuel rail pressures and emissions and, reduction of NOx and fossil fuels, anthracite coal versus bituminous, you're still coming down to the same thing. Nobody wants dirty air. No one wants that. No one wants to run a piece of junk equipment. We pride ourselves, but maybe it's an older piece of equipment. We retrofit some of our equipment because you just can't afford what's going on today with not everyone can afford Tier 4 level equipment. This is on the emissions side that we're talking about, but everyone likes clean air. But bottom line, it has to evolve slowly. It can't happen. EV vehicles can't happen overnight. No one can afford it. They don't work in our industry. I'm speaking for the heavy industry. The pickup trucks don't work. When you look at the thing, you're still plugging them in. You're still burning fuel, fossil fuel, whatever it is you're doing to make the electric to charge these things. When the batteries go bad, what do? You still have a hazardous product you have to get rid of. The owner's going to be responsible for that. They're going to have to figure out how to get rid of that when the time comes. You're helping foreign agencies actually do this. Pennsylvania's in a perfect spot. You got anthracite coal, you got regular coal, you have bituminous coal, you have different regions with different things, you have fracking, you have pipelines. There's so many things we could do and improve the area just with a little regulation change, or help the businesses grow, help us grow, help the industry, help the trades, so you can have the American dream. You can have a house. You can have education. Everyone likes clean air. you know, education. They want to feel safe in their neighborhood. I work in some lousy areas here in the city. I don't see that. I think we're going the wrong way, but common sense has to prevail at some point in time. I don't think it's that really great idea that you have to look over your shoulder every time you're doing a job or something. You're working at night shift. Next thing you know, you see guns pointed at you with the scopes because they don't like you making noise in their neighborhood. I mean, it's scary time. And I think you've lost the respect. The parents have to get involved with the kids in the education. They have to get involved. It's just a common sense approach. When we grew up, I was thinking of that the other day. You know, the neighbors would rat you out. They'd take a swat at you. And if you got away with that, you got home and there's your mom and she swung a 1-inch yardstick that was 3 foot long. And you know what? She could swing that like Mike Schwitt in the bottom of the ninth. And then you go to and then the heavy would come in, my father, because he's a construction worker, and he didn't show much mercy. He was obviously, a major on special forces in the Army, so he didn't tolerate a lot of nonsense. I think we've lost the common sense. I think we lost our neighborhood. You think about the police and fire. They're revered here 20 years ago at 911. Now all of a sudden they're no good. I have friends now that are at my age and they're retiring. They're counting the days to get out. It's not what they signed up for. I think we got to get back to a more common sense across the board, have the parents involved, common sense approach to that, safe environment, good schools, and live the American dream that I was afforded. We need the politicians to step and back the police and get back to a more common sense approach, if you want my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that I recently was involved in coming from the water industry was the PFAS regulations, the forever chemicals, and what you've seen. I worked at American Water, and this impacts some of our bigger water companies in Pennsylvania, Aqua PA and Pennsylvania American Water. What you see, those companies when they worked with their scientists in their labs, and they would test for PFAS, and they have these programs within their water treatment plants that can reduce the level, and they did everything with the levels that New Jersey and the Pennsylvania would do, and say this is the levels that we can test for, and then the EPA recently put in new federal regulations that were so far below what is even capable of being tested for. And you heard, the industry, you heard scientists, and saying, why would you put in a federal regulation that we don't know we don't know for sure it makes people safer. You can't test for it. You can't eliminate it to that level. And it goes back to the point of, we talk about common sense. So, the EPA putting out something and everybody sort of is like, well, what do you want us to do with this? And then what happens is, we talked about now these bigger water companies, have to invest rather than invest in infrastructure that improves the quality and efficiency of their system that benefits their customers and our communities, they are now investing in possibly something that may have no impact whatsoever, or you can't measure and you can't test to. And then also what it does is, really impacts the smaller water companies as well, because, these are investments that they can't make. They don't have that kind of money, and it puts them in a tough spot of what they can do and what they have to do. And again, just going back to when we talk about common sense reform and federal regulations of doing something when they didn't listen to the broader community, and now you're going to be seeing these issues throughout the water industry in the country and coming, and again in Pennsylvania especially. I mean, I think there was just a study in the Inquirer where there's forever chemicals in every water, which is unfortunate. But there are things in place that can get them down to a level that is acceptable. But again, just something I personally experienced.
So Pennsylvanians should not have to choose between living in a state with clean air, with clean water, and living in a state that is attractive to investment and job growth. We can do both at the same time. And when you look around the country, the states that are succeeding, that's exactly what they're doing. It requires work, it requires diligence, but we can have both. And as we talked about before, again, the reforms that we're talking about are not intended to water down or to make any less stringent the requirements that are in place for environmental protection. It's about having rules of the game that are adhered to, calling balls and strikes, not having the rules change depending on who's on who's the ref. So Pennsylvania businesses, I think, are comfortable with that and prepared to proceed with it. They just want to know that it's a fair playing field.
To follow up on Joe's point, the additional cost by those water companies may also be passed on to the ratepayer. So again, you're adding costs to the citizens of Pennsylvania and the business of Pennsylvania. I think in hearing what all the panelists have said today, we keep hearing common sense, but I think there's another message, and that comes from the top. Jim's members take the lead of the way he leads, his union. Your employees take the lead on the way you lead your company. And as elected officials, we talked about some bills that have already passed the Senate that are very basic, as Alex is saying. We're not going to turn the world upside down. We're going to have a consistent process that can be relied upon by those that are applying for those permits. The governor has taken a lead on some of these issues, and hopefully the tone from the governor cleans up the actions of some of the bureaucrats, because it was the bureaucrats at the EPA that made these changes, which makes things more complicated. So I think the tone from the top is part of what matters. The elected officials, hopefully the House takes up the bill and it gets some of these bills and gets to the governor's desk. We want to make these changes. The majority of the Senate has already voted to make some of these changes to make things better. So hopefully, our leadership on those fronts can be coupled with a change in tone from those that are actually reviewing the permits, and the process can be improved for all.
And then just real quick, 2 points. One is that during our hearings that we had, one of the individuals who represented an environmentalist group had mentioned that, or was asked by our panel member, what are some of the things that would be necessary to garner your support? And then they rattled off a list. Okay, so if, a company came in and agreed to all of those things, would you change your opposition? And the response was no. And so it was really, eye-opening that, that is the mentality of some of the organizations and folks out there who are in opposition to very common sense things. But separate of that, I just want to make a note that companies, especially in the energy sector, when it comes to transporting natural gas, they're incentivized, monetarily incentivized to behave properly and to make sure that all of that natural gas is staying within the pipelines and being sent abroad or to its end user. So they don't want to lose profitability. They want to maximize their opportunities. So they're very much incentivized to control emissions and to ensure that they're maximizing that type of product that they're providing to the end consumer. So I just wanted to get those 2 points out there, and I again am very grateful for this organization coming into Northeast Philadelphia and helping to have this conversation. It's really important. Thanks.
Thanks again, and I think with that, I'll bring it to a close. Jim told me if I didn't get Rob back to work, I would experience Philly tough. I'm not sure what that is. But I want to thank all you for attending, of course, and all our panelists for a great discussion. I really think this, the talk we had today and the 2 words of common and sense together explain why Building a Better America came here and other places to hear from folks that deal with permits and jobs every day, and bring the ideas that, look, we can make some changes that aren't exactly earth-shaking, but they can make this process a whole lot better, preserve our ability to do projects in the United States, and keep our workers working. So thanks to everyone. Thank you again.